Welcome, Jennifer Villarreal here. This is the Sales from the Heart Show, the place where business meets heart and soul. And today we have the fabulous, the one and only.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rocio Vallejo. Welcome.
Oh, Rocio. You always make us laugh here. We've switched to these mics so she doesn't hit her tooth anymore. Actually, we have a great show for you today, but first we do need to bring something to your attention, and it's a bit more serious. So Why don't we go ahead and switch gears here? And Rocio, can you tell people a little bit about what we're going to talk about that's really important and that needs to have even more media attention than it's having right now?
Definitely. So it's been brought to our attention, and from my understanding that there are 43 students from Guerrero, Mexico that have gone missing. And so the story kind of goes like this. These 43 students had gathered to protest at the governor's house. The first lady, I believe it was the first lady, was speaking about how great the school system is out there. And these students didn't feel that, that she was promoting their school system correctly. So they went to go protest, and they ended up writing on the house of the governor.
Right. So it was the wife, right?
The wife, yes.
Uh-huh.
The governor was upset or enraged, really, by the protesters. So he called the cops, he called the police, and asked them to kill them all. And so the police officers showed up at the governor's house and started shooting at the students. A couple of the students, I believe, died. The students then went on to run away and called the police, thinking that the police would go and protect them and their rights. And when the police showed up, they started shooting at the students again. So the students that remained, which I believe are the 43 students that have gone missing, were taken by the police and handed over to the drug cartel out there. And so now everybody around the world, really, and if you can see the screens behind us, you'll see pictures and clips of people that have gathered in support of these students all over the world, asking that we draw attention to the situation and that we really find these students and bring them back home and unite them with their families.
Yes. And I think it's really important that we don't underestimate the power that we have through media, through social media. Our voices need to be heard.
Definitely.
And especially for these 43 students that are missing. And, here we are in the States, and sometimes we take maybe advantage, or we don't appreciate the freedom that we have here. And regardless of where we're at, people should be treated with dignity and respect. And we shouldn't be afraid to go voice our opinion. And yes, we should do it in a respectful manner, right? And I think some of the stuff is hitting home as well, where there's some dysfunction. There's some, up in Waukegan, the teachers are on about a 3-week strike right now, right? And some of the communication that's going back and forth with parents, with students, with teachers, with board members, we have to remember to, again, come from that heart space, even when we're in the midst of high emotions and in difficult situations. And I know it's a lot easier said than done, but come on now, to have 43 students that are missing, that have disappeared and taken by the cartel and enforced by the government is just ridiculous. And when we're talking about situations at home, it may not be that extreme, but think about all the people that are being hurt amongst all of this. And maybe lives aren't necessarily being taken, with a teacher's strikes, but remember about the lives that are impacted on a consistent basis. So we definitely want to extend our prayers and our thoughts to the families out in Mexico. And again, you can create awareness by using the hashtag here.
Yes, so it's hashtag 43, and it says hasta encontrarlos. So let's find them, and I'm sure that I think we have these posters on our Facebook page and on our website. Our website here is www.planetaxlive. That's planetaxlive.com. So please go ahead and share.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk how we can deal with difficult people. And so we're not going to talk about, people that you can't necessarily deal with, like the Mexican cartel, okay? Not to that extreme. But we deal with difficult people not only in the work setting, also maybe it trickles into our family and personal life. But we'll talk about how we either are going to get distracted by these difficult situations, how we deal with, or how we ditch the situation, right? So there's a variety of different ways that we can do this. Rocio, have you ever dealt with toxic people before?
I have, unfortunately. So yes, there are a lot more people out there that exist than I'd like to admit. It's unfortunate, but they're out there.
And it'll kind of make us scratch our head a little bit as to, how do we handle these people? We try to come at it from a rational standpoint, and I think that actually distracts us even more. I think that also there's other people that maybe don't intentionally mean to be so difficult or toxic, but then there's others that are absolutely aware of the drama that they're creating and maybe get a little bit of a rush off of pushing other people's buttons. Would you say that could be the case, Rocio?
Definitely. And now that I hear you saying it out loud, I ask myself, who's worse? The people that know that they're doing it, or the people that do it and are clueless to the fact that they're doing it? I've dealt with both, and they're equally, difficult.
Yeah. Well, I think if we sit here and try to determine and analyze, we're falling into that trap. So we don't want to do that. Right. And I think also, removing ourselves from those games, from those traps is really, really important. It's not always that easy, and especially when you're in the moment. So we're going to give you some tips today on how maybe you can take some of these and apply them to your situation. Obviously, every situation is going to be different. And of course, if you have a really challenging situation, you can always call in to the show. You can contact us. And the best email to use would be info@salesfromtheheart.com. We had a little glitch in the email over the previous shows, so we have fixed that. And we are happy to receive your emails as well as comments and suggestions on YouTube. So you can find us on Planeta X Live. Yes. On YouTube, as well as the Sales from the Heart show. And make sure to subscribe so you get all the updates of the live shows as well as some of the other events that we have going on.
Right. Or you could always call in.
Yes.
And the number here is 773-236-0015.
All right. So when we're dealing with difficult people, there are some things that can end up coming up, right? We can end up being stressed out. We can lose some sleep over it. We can get our emotions heightened and react in a difficult way with others, maybe at home, we bring our work home with us. Right. And so we want to recognize how not to get trapped into this emotional chaos and deal with mainly facts when we're dealing with people like this.
Right.
So it's important to remember that you are in control of the situation more than you probably realize. And it might take some time to map out some of these things and keep implementing it, right? Don't give up and say, oh, that doesn't work, and I'm just going to, fight with this person, or I'm going to flight, or I know those are natural reactions.
I'm going to vent on Facebook.
I'm going to vent on Facebook. That's another one that we hear all the time. Right. Or I'm just going to deal with it because that's what I have to do. Right. No, there are different ways that we can actually be proactive as opposed to reactive.
Definitely.
All right. So the first one we're going to talk about here is releasing these negative emotions and maintaining our composure by emptying our cup.
Right.
Okay. So a lot of times we have things going on internally that we're projecting onto other people, and we have to make sure that we release that. Rocio and I have talked about this a lot on the previous shows, and there's different methods and different ways that we can assist you for doing that.
Right.
But I think this quote by Bruce Lee is really, really sums it up. He says, emptiness, the starting point. Drop all your preconceived and fixed ideas and be neutral. Do you know why this cup is useful? Because it is empty. A lot of times you hear me say, Rocio, when we're having a coaching session, it's about coming from that place of neutrality. Right? Coming from that place of peace. Right. And so when you're in that moment, Rocio, and you're a little heated, how do you get centered and come from that place of neutrality? What are some things that you do?
Well, some things, I was definitely that person. I would get angry. I would let the rest of my life and other things that were going on get affected by this one encounter with, this negative person. But since working with Jennifer, I've adopted some new methods of coping, and one of them that's really helps a lot is praying. And for some people, maybe it's meditation, but I think it's finding quiet time to really connect spiritually with whatever, again, it is that you believe in.
Sure.
For me, it's God.
It's prayer.
Yeah,
right.
And it's prayer, definitely.
I like how you also touched on the fact of meditation or just slowing down a little bit.
Right.
So one of the tips that I would suggest for you of being able to do this is slowing down and taking those deep breaths. Understanding that a lot of times when we're stressed out, we tend to have shallow breath. We don't realize, there is an appropriate and better way to breathe. And typically, as we take this deep inhale in, our tummy will expand, right? And this is if you ever watch a baby sleeping, this is their natural method of breathing. And so we want to get to that centeredness and then allow ourselves to release anything that's blocking us in that moment. So, we're not necessarily saying, okay, go back through since childhood, connect all those dots and release all those things before you have this conversation. That would take a long time.
Right.
And trying to process that on your own would be probably not the most effective way to do that.
Yeah, I think this is definitely something that you can do with just a couple of minutes, and you could do it anywhere.
Exactly.
Right? You could do it in your car. I mean, there have been moments where I've called Jennifer, just, stressed out, and she'll tell me, you have to empty your cup of all the bad things, but you also need to fill yourself back up.
Right. Release the yucky. I think I've said that.
Yeah, you do.
The blocks that are in our heart,
Yes.
right? The things that we're feeling, the attachment that we're associating or projecting from, this other person onto us. And they're doing probably the same thing.
Right.
So I know you're probably like, yeah, well, what about the other person? They're a jerk. Or, what does this have to do with them? And why am I focusing on me? Well, because that's what you do have control over, right? And a lot of times people just are afraid of feeling. They're trying to hide and not deal with that emotion. And that's why we talk about how others can run and mask behind work, mask behind other substances, right? And also try to project that onto you and make you absorb their frustration or their fear that they're actually dealing with.
Right. And the clarity that you'll experience as a result of taking just a couple of minutes to empty yourself of all that yucky stuff and fill yourself back up.
Spiritually is really the thing that I found to be the thing that's consistent. You know, I've done the positive affirmations, and quite frankly, for me, the opposite of positive is negative, and that bubble burst. When I go from something that's more powerful, that has that solid foundation, and I'm not necessarily talking from a religious standpoint, and if that's for you, fantastic. For me, it's more about my relationship, that intimate relationship that I get to have, as well as experience. And in these moments, we get to share these breakthroughs with other people, with other clients, there's no coincidence we're talking about dealing with difficult people, because not only myself, I've encountered this recently, but also several of my clients have been facing the same thing. And this has been the pattern that's been going on over the past, 1 to 2 weeks here. And so, understand that this is an opportunity to serve somebody else as well that might be encountering something similar. And when we do that, it's very healing.
It is, definitely.
All right. So let's go into the second thing, which is shifting from being reactive to proactive and seeing both sides, right? So this all kind of ties in together. We release those feelings. We understand that we need to be able to fill back up so we can be centered and be in that moment and understand it from somebody else's perspective. And so we might feel wronged, we might feel victimized by what that person is doing to us. But there's multiple ways of viewing the situation as opposed to just reacting to it.
Right.
So let's say you think that somebody is ignoring your call, for instance, right? Let's consider what some other possibilities would be. Maybe they're just unavailable. Maybe they're going through something very stressful and it's a sensitive topic and they don't necessarily want to reveal to you what that is.
Right.
Right. What do you think about this?
So from my personal experience, I know that I have, if it's been difficult to get a hold of somebody, for instance, and I've recently been going through something like this, my natural tendency was to think that it was me. Mm-hmm. What did I do? Do they just not want to talk to me? Do they not want to work with me anymore? And I've been able to kind of switch my perspective or change my perspective. And now I start to think, well, what is it that they're going through? Because I know that I have a natural tendency when I have just a lot going on in my life, it's always kind of been easy for me to close myself off to the world. So I will ignore phone calls, ignore text messages, or take a really long time to respond or call people back. And so I kind of had to put things in perspective and think, well, and I could be that this person it has nothing to do with me and everything to do with them. So definitely putting myself in the other person's shoes helps a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times what people do is not so much because of us, right? It's because of them, and that's what they're used to. Maybe they're not used to having a conversation with someone, and so they think if they avoid it enough, it'll disappear, right? Or maybe they think they have to solve their own problem, by themselves, and that could take them a while, or it's not the most efficient thing, so they're avoiding having the conversation.
Right.
Either way, we don't necessarily want to make excuses for people or start validating, well, it could be this and it could be that, right? If it's not serving you, then make sure that you understand that, we're not making up a story for them either way. Right. But it's more so for you to be able to understand what it's like. So, one of the ways that you can help yourself understand this is saying, well, it must not be easy to manage the expectations and performance of other people. So from a management perspective, right? If our manager is being just outrageous, maybe and really demanding, then maybe we use that sentence. It must not be easy to have these high expectations for our sales team, and have that upper management place that pressure on them. Right.
And sometimes I hope it's okay, I want to share something. So as I mentioned, I have recently been going through something like this. And I have a friend that posted something on Facebook yesterday, and it was just so appropriate. And so I want to share it, and it really fits with this. So this was the quote, and you have to excuse me, I don't know where he took this quote from. But it says, "Don't make assumptions. Find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstandings, sadness, and drama. With just one agreement, you can completely transform your life." So sometimes it's just having the courage to have a conversation.
Right.
Right.
And that brings us into the third step. Thank you for sharing that. That's really good. We want to be soft with the person, but yet be firm on the issue. So we want to have these boundaries established and be able to have these difficult conversations. And sometimes it's not necessarily always the difficult person. It's a difficult conversation, the difficult situation.
Right.
And so there's two elements to communicating with people. Again, it's the relationship that we have with that person, and then the issue that we're discussing.
Right.
And a lot of times, one of the toughest, difficult situations to talk about, and we've mentioned this before in other shows, is money. Having the conversation about money. Right? Whether it's with your significant other, whether it's in a business setting, whether you want to use somebody's services, but maybe you just can't afford it, right?
Or a client.
A client that you're presenting to as well, and you're getting some pushback on there. And so we just want to slow that down and really understand the perspective of where that person is coming from, where you're coming from, and firmly discuss the issue at hand. Right. Having these open loops and not, having a resolved decision or a resolved communication on it, it can drive us a little nutty and can keep us up at night. Right. So here's a tip. You can actually say this. I want to talk about what's on your mind, but I can't do it when you're yelling. So let's say your significant other, you're getting into it and they're yelling. Yeah. So you can say, let's either sit down and talk more calmly, or take a time out and we can come back and talk about this later. Right? So you're taking control, you're understanding and establishing the boundaries. You're also understanding that maybe the other person needs a little bit more time to process. Maybe they need to cool down. Whereas some other people, they might need to talk about it right away. So you have to come up to some kind of middle ground there and explain your needs and expectations to somebody, as well as understand where they're coming from.
And I think sometimes you can't control what the other person does or how they react, but you can control yours and how you react to them. So I know, just to throw it in there, but I know a couple people that just get really heated and just like to go off on what I like to say. They like to verbally vomit. I mean, they like to, verbally vomit on you. So everything that comes to their mind, they just spit it out without thinking anything. Your natural reaction might be to do the same. So maybe training yourself or learning how to kind of take a moment, breathe, either not say anything and just let it all marinate for a while, or just, I don't know, be a little more careful with your words. So you can always control what you do and how you react.
Right. I think that's important, Rocio, what you just said there, especially from a sales perspective. A lot of times people say that, they mirror the other person, right? And then when those emotions get heated, it can lead to something that isn't necessarily in the best way. So you want to maintain that composure. Also, when dealing with somebody who's maybe not getting a specific project done on time and it's affecting your business, it's affecting the people that you communicate with.
The overall team.
Yep, the overall team. That can be a really difficult situation as well. And so an example could be something like this. Hey, I appreciate, you putting a lot of time into this particular project. At the same time, I see that only 3 of the items are completed out of 10, for instance. Let's talk about how to finish up, this particular task and get back on schedule, right? So we just slow that down as opposed to saying, hey, you didn't do what you needed to do. When are you going to get it done? You're feeding that problem and it's coming through because of your own frustration, but also the other person might be frustrated dealing with a difficult situation, or maybe they just don't have the best way to communicate and work efficiently, right? And so you have to kind of break that down and take that lead and not get sucked into the drama.
Right. I love that. I think delivery is everything.
Yep. And pausing, right?
Definitely
pausing with this and shifting them from that moment of chaos to cooperation.
Right. Something that I've learned from you is it's okay to take a couple of seconds, right? I'm quick to speak sometimes. Yeah, great.
Yep, it's okay to have those pauses, those silent moments. And it also allows the other person maybe to release or vent a little bit more of what they have to release, right? And then they can calm down and actually have a conversation with you from that place of neutrality.
Right. Great tips.
All right. So the next thing is shifting our state of mind. Maybe we add in a little humor. I think Tony Robbins is really good at doing this. Like all of a sudden, somebody will be talking and they're just in the state of confusion or chaos. And then all of a sudden he'll just do something like that. Right? I mean, she didn't expect this and she just laughed.
But I think it really helps to almost kind of recenter you.
Right.
I think it's great.
Good to know. Yeah. I'll constantly do this to Rocio. Did you see her reaction? Was her hand went up to block that already. Good reflexes there. All right. So we want to add in humor, changing that state of mind. It breaks the ice a little bit, right?
Definitely.
We can shine light on some truth then from that perspective. And then we just disarm that difficult behavior that's coming through, and you might get a slap back if you hit somebody in the head like that. But hey, just joke about it, laugh about it.
Right? Maybe that isn't the right approach for everyone.
Not for everyone. For the dogs, it works. Caesar Milan does, but yeah.
Right.
All right. So then the last thing and most important thing, and you touched on this already, Rocio, too, is applying that inner strength and wisdom. And you and I get that from connecting spiritually by allowing that guidance to come through. And that does absolutely come through more when we clear out that yucky, right? We make room for something new to pass through us and to be able to serve other people. And understanding, too, that other people magnify and mirror back to us something that we need to address or something that we need to share with other people as well. So, we can absorb the negativity from other people, or we can learn from this and we can use this to really not only empower ourselves, but empower other people.
Right.
I think the other thing that comes along with applying this inner strength and wisdom is the opposite of that, which is the self-sabotage, the self-doubt, and the talk that comes in. And so what are some of the ways that you handle with dealing with the self-sabotage, Rocio?
I think, and this is going to go back to, and obviously, again, this isn't something that you can do, within a couple of minutes. It's something that took a couple of weeks, maybe, for me to really, and then on a daily basis, practicing and really learning how to build and wear that armor that I've learned to create for myself. But I used to, I think, self-sabotage a lot, or really put myself in the position of the victim. And I think that I've been able to now learn and deal with the things I had carried my entire life. I think making peace with my story.
With your past.
With my
with your
past,
story.
yes, has definitely helped with the self-sabotaging. I just don't do it anymore. And if I do find myself, if I do find some of those things come back up, again, mentioning the armor, and now I see the signs, and I can kind of recenter myself. And then I always have you. So having somebody that you really having somebody that you trust and that you can talk to. Not all of your friends are people that you can share everything with. Maybe your spouse isn't always the person that you could, open up to. But really finding somebody, and if that is a coach for you, for me, it's definitely Jennifer. I think I tell her all the time, like, my husband's great. He's a great listener, but sometimes I'm like, he just doesn't get it, and I feel like you do. So having somebody that you can really open up with and share and be honest with is important.
Yes. And I'm going to lay it out there because we keep it real. So it's also about coaching you through how to communicate that with your husband, right?
Right.
And not necessarily have these expectations on other people in the manner that we expect them to understand without explaining those things to them.
Right.
Or did you just hit your tooth again?
Hanging my lip.
See, here goes the humor. Somebody didn't want to go there about her husband. You brought it up. So, yeah, having these difficult conversations, right. With people, that's really what it's about, in tapping into our vulnerability and being able to use different resources. Hey, I'm not the person for everybody out there, right? And nor can I be a coach to everybody out there. But there are resources, and we want to let you know that we can point you in that direction. So please feel free to email us at info@salesfromtheheart.com, and we can give you a list of some of those resources. You can always call us as well offline. So when we're not live on the air, that number is 773-614-SALE. So anything else, Rocio, that we feel that everybody should know about today?
I think it's important to take I think these are really great tips. They're things that I've used. They're things that I have learned to implement. So definitely take them and use them. It's worth a try, and then kind of figuring out what works for you. And then I think we keep going back to setting the foundation. I think that's really important. So setting the foundation and I think working out your issues, because we all have them, will really help you interact with other people.
Yeah. And just because we address those issues once doesn't mean that they can't come back.
Come back up. They do.
We still have our moments, right?
Definitely.
We all do, but maybe we handle them differently. We process through them differently. Something that maybe I would have gotten hung up on years ago, 4 years, now I can process through in a matter of a day, maybe even a couple hours, couple minutes. So you don't have to, live with this is just how it is. Life is difficult.
Yeah.
People are difficult. Things don't come easy. Things actually start to come through effortless. And it's riding out through some storms that could come up in a different manner with that strength, with that wisdom, and with that support.
Definitely.
So thank you for joining us today. We absolutely love sharing these tips and ideas and topics with you. And again, we're here to support you. So have a great day.
Yes.
And we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everyone.